In the silence of monasteries and hermitages, far from worldly vanity, astonishing insights were born. Russian elders, these spiritual lighthouses of their time, saw what was hidden from the ordinary gaze. Their words, spoken decades and even centuries ago, resonate today with striking relevance. As if they looked through the veil of time, observing our age of technology, global upheavals, and spiritual trials. The phenomenon of foreseeing the future has always raised many questions. Modern science offers several explanations, from intuitive analysis of trends to special states of consciousness that allow one to perceive information outside conventional temporal frameworks. Believers, however, see in this a manifestation of grace, a special gift bestowed upon people of exceptional spiritual purity. Is this random coincidence, brilliant foresight, or genuine prophecy? Can the ability to predict events destined to happen generations later be scientifically explained? And most importantly, what lessons can we draw from these voices of the past, sounding so clearly in our present? The roots of staretsdom go deep into the history of Christianity. As early as the 4th century, the first hermits appeared in the deserts of Egypt and Palestine, seeking solitude for prayer and communion with God. It was there that the tradition of spiritual mentorship originated, where experienced ascetics passed on their wisdom to younger monks. This tradition came to Russia with the adoption of Christianity, but truly flourished only in the 18th century, thanks to Saint Paisius Velichkovsky. Returning from Mount Athos, he brought with him not only ancient texts on inner prayer, but also the living practice of spiritual guidance. Paisius's disciples spread the seeds of staretsdom throughout the monasteries of Russia, and soon this phenomenon became central to Russian spiritual life. Optina Pustin holds a special place in the history of Russian staretsdom. This small monastery in the Kaluga province became a true center of spiritual attraction. Not only simple peasants, but also intellectuals, writers, and philosophers came here. Nikolai Gogol, Fyodor Dostoevsky, Leo Tolstoy. All of them sought answers to their tormenting questions from the Optina elders. What made the starets special? First and foremost, it was their spiritual experience. Years of incessant prayer, strict fasting, and struggle with passions purified their hearts and minds. They passed through a path of inner transformation, which in the Orthodox tradition is called deification. Through this transformation, the starets acquired special gifts, clairvoyance, healing, and sometimes prophecy. It is important to understand that the starets did not consider themselves prophets in the biblical sense. They did not receive direct revelations from God about the future of humanity. Rather, their prophecies were the fruit of deep spiritual vision, the ability to discern the seeds of the future in the present. Observing spiritual processes in society, they could predict their consequences, much like an experienced doctor determines the development of a disease from the first symptoms. It is interesting that many starets came from common people. Saint Seraphim of Sarov was the son of a merchant. Starets Ambrose of Optina was from a poor church servant's family. But through spiritual ascent, they acquired wisdom inaccessible even to the most educated people of their time. Their words were simple, but behind this simplicity lay a depth that amazed their interlocutors. The revolution and the subsequent persecutions of the Church dealt a heavy blow to the institution of staretsdom. Many monasteries were closed, and starets were repressed. However, the tradition was not interrupted. In the most difficult conditions of the Soviet era, it continued to exist underground. The starets received people secretly, in private homes, and sometimes even in prisons and camps. It was during this period that many of them left prophecies about the future of Russia and the world, which today strike with their accuracy. Optina Pustin became a true treasury of spiritual prophecies of the 19th and early 20th centuries. A succession of elders, following one another, left behind astonishing predictions, many of which are coming true before our eyes. Reverend Ambrose of Optina, perhaps the most famous of them, spoke in the 1870s about technological innovations that would change the world. There will come a time when people will talk from one city to another by wire, and then entirely without wire, the elder predicted long before the invention of the telephone and radio. His prophecy about means of transport is also striking. The time will come, and iron will fly overhead, and people will swim underwater like fish. Contemporaries did not understand these words, but we, living in the age of aviation and submarines, can appreciate their accuracy. The elders' words about the spiritual consequences of technological progress sound particularly alarming. Is this not what we observe today, when digital technologies increasingly absorb human attention? Ambrose's successor, Elder Barsanuphius, predicted the revolution and persecution of the Church with astonishing accuracy. A time will come when Russia will be torn apart by internecine strife. Churches will be closed or destroyed. Persecution of the faith will be universal, cruel, terrible. But for these sufferings, the Lord will have mercy on Russia and lead it through suffering to great glory. These words, spoken at the beginning of the 20th century, accurately describe the events that unfolded after 1917. Elder Nectarius of Optina, the last of the pre-revolutionary Optina elders, left prophecies that are particularly relevant today. He spoke of a time when the world will be entangled in snares. People will be as if under a single power. It will be a terrible time. Many researchers see in these words a prediction of globalization and digital control. His prophecy about changes in worldview is striking. A time will come when not persecutions, but money and the allure of this world will turn people away from God, and far more souls will perish than during open God fighting. Is this not what is happening now, when material values and comfort are displacing spiritual needs? Of particular value are the elders' prophecies about the technological temptations of the 21st century. As early as the 1930s, Elder Nectarius warned, "Many interpreters see in these words a prediction of digital identification and the choice between material well-being and loyalty to traditional values." What is striking about the prophecies of the Optina elders is not only the accuracy of predictions about technological inventions, but also a deep understanding of their impact on the human soul. They foresaw not just the appearance of new devices, but also how these devices would change people's consciousness, their attitude to the world, and to each other. Reverend Seraphim of Sarov is one of the most revered figures in Russian Orthodoxy. His prophetic gift was recognized by his contemporaries long before his official canonization. It is astonishing that the elder, who lived in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, left prophecies that describe our time with striking accuracy. Seraphim of Sarov spoke of the Russia of the future in a language understandable to his contemporaries. But behind the simple images lay deep insights into the fate of the country and the world. The people will reach such a point that there will be no faith, the Reverend predicted. There will come a time when even the innocent will be condemned. That is when Russia will rise, gathering all peoples within itself. Many researchers connect these words with the period of Soviet atheism and the subsequent revival of faith in the post-Soviet era. Seraphim's prophecies about technological development attract particular attention. Quote, "The elders said in the early 19th century, when such technologies seemed like pure fantasy. But even more striking are his words about the influence of these inventions on the human soul." Quote, Is this not what we observe today, when technological progress is accompanied by spiritual regression? Reverend Seraphim also predicted changes in the social structure of Russia. He spoke of a time when, quote, "Many see in these words a prophecy about the passport system, and in the modern context, about digital identification." However, the most important aspect of Seraphim of Sarov's prophecies is his vision of Russia's spiritual revival. "After terrible trials will come great glory," the elder asserted. He foresaw that Russia would endure the most difficult trials, but would ultimately return to its spiritual roots. Saint Righteous John of Kronstadt is one of the most revered saints in Russia of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. His pastoral ministry in Kronstadt, where he served as abbot of St. Andrew's Cathedral, brought him national fame. However, few know that Father John possessed an astonishing gift of foresight, leaving behind prophecies that describe our modern world with striking accuracy. As early as 1890, he wrote in his diary, "The Russian kingdom wavers, totters, is close to falling." These words were uttered 27 years before the revolution, when externally the Russian Empire seemed indomitable. In another entry, he predicted, "If there is no repentance among the Russian people, the end of the world is near. God will take away the pious Tsar and send a scourge in the form of impious, cruel, self-proclaimed rulers who will drench the entire land with blood and tears." The accuracy with which Father John described the spiritual state of society after the revolution is striking. The new rulers of Russia, who hate Christ and his church, will eradicate faith. They will drench the entire land with martyred blood. The whole world will tremble with horror. But in the end, when it seems to many that the triumph of evil is assured, the resurrection of Russia and the salvation of the world will come. John of Kronstadt's words about technological progress and its impact on spirituality sound particularly relevant. A time will come when people will be proud of their inventions, forgetting the Creator. They will create machines that will think for them and will worship the works of their hands. And this pride in technological progress will turn many away from God. In the era of artificial intelligence and widespread digitalization, these words sound prophetic. Father John also foresaw the information overload of the modern world. There will be a time when people will drown in a sea of information, but the truth will be increasingly difficult to find. Lies and truth will intertwine so much that only those with spiritual discernment will be able to distinguish one from the other. The saint also predicted the moral degradation of society. A time will come when sin will be called virtue, and virtue, sin. And those who try to live Christianly will be ridiculed and persecuted. Is this not what is happening now, when traditional moral values are being re-evaluated and their defenders are often branded as backward and intolerant? John of Kronstadt paid special attention to family and child rearing. He foresaw a crisis in family relations. The destruction of the family will be the beginning of the destruction of states. Where there is no reverence for parents and elders, where marital fidelity is trampled upon, there is no future. These words are especially relevant today, when the institution of the traditional family is experiencing serious trials. The Soviet period was a time of immense trials for the Russian Orthodox Church. Churches were closed, priests were repressed, and believers were persecuted. However, even in these dark decades, spiritual life did not completely die out. In secret cells, remote villages, and even camps, elders, guardians of the ancient tradition of spiritual mentorship, continued their service. One of the most revered ascetics of the Soviet period was Saint Lavrenti of Chernigov. In years when atheism was the state ideology, The elder predicted, "The time will come when churches will open. There will be many of them, but it will be impossible to go to them. Everything will change." Many interpret these enigmatic words as a premonition of our time. Churches are indeed open, but spiritual life within them is often replaced by external rituals. The words of Elder Lavrenti about the future information society are striking. The time will come when everyone will have a mark, as it were, on their forehead and on their hand, and only he who has this mark will be able to buy food and everything else. And on that mark will be the number 666. Many researchers see in these words a prediction of digital identification and electronic payments, which have become a reality in the 21st century. Saint Seraphim of Viritsa, whose elder's ministry fell during the difficult years of the war and post-war period, left astonishing prophecies about the future of Russia. The time will come when not persecutions, but money and the allurements of this world will turn people away from God, and many more souls will perish than in times of open God-fighting, said the elder. These words accurately describe the spiritual state of post-Soviet society, when material values became more important than spiritual ones for many. Elder Seraphim also predicted the revival of Orthodoxy after the fall of the communist regime. Something unexpected will happen. Russia will rise from the dead, and the whole world will be amazed. Orthodoxy in it will revive and triumph. At the same time, he warned that this revival would be accompanied by new trials. Many will rise against Russia and Orthodoxy, and their end will be heavy. Schema Archimandrite Seraphim Tiapochkin, who spiritually nourished believers in the 60s and 80s of the 20th century, predicted, "Such a time will come when there will be a spiritual blossoming in Russia. Many churches and monasteries will open. Even foreigners will come to us to be baptized. But this will not last long. For about 15 years, then the Antichrist will come." The predictions of Elder Nikolai Guryanov about the technological temptations of our time proved to be strikingly accurate. As early as the 80s, he said, "The time will come when the whole world will be entangled in iron threads, and people will talk through them over long distances. These threads will bring the temptations of the world into every person's home, and many souls will perish from this." In these words, the internet and modern means of communication are easily recognized. Elder Ioan Krestiankin, one of the most revered ascetics of the late 20th century, predicted, "There will be a storm, and the Russian ship will be broken. But even on splinters and wreckage, people are saved. And yet, not all will perish. We must pray. Everyone must repent and pray fervently. A great miracle of God will be revealed, and all the splinters and wreckage will gather and unite, and the ship will be recreated in its beauty, and will go its way, destined by God." In the digital age, the prophecies of Russian elders about technological progress and its impact on the human soul resonate with particular poignancy. It is astonishing that people who had never seen computers or the internet were able to describe with striking accuracy not only the devices themselves, but also their influence on human consciousness. Elder Nectary of Optina, as early as the 1920s, said, "A time will come when the whole world will be entangled in a web, and in this web, people will be like flies." Today, looking at the global internet, which has enveloped the planet, it is impossible not to be struck by the accuracy of this image. Venerable Lavrenti of Chernigov predicted, "A time will come when people will have boxes in their homes, through which the enemy will address each person, and people will believe him more than the gospel." Does this not resemble modern televisions and computers, through which a stream of information enters every home shaping worldviews. Elder Antony of Optina warned of a time when people will carry small boxes with them that will show them the whole world, but will turn them away from God. In these words, modern smartphones, which have become an indispensable part of most people's lives, are easily recognized. It is striking that the elders foresaw not only the technical characteristics of devices, but also the psychological consequences of their use. Venerable Seraphim of Viritsa said, "A time will come when a person will not be able to live without these devices. They will become his idols, without which he cannot conceive of his existence." Today, psychologists are seriously discussing the problem of digital addiction, when people experience a real withdrawal without access to a smartphone or the internet. Elder Paisios of Mount Athos, who lived in the second half of the 20th century, left surprisingly accurate observations about social networks. People will communicate at a distance, see each other on screens, but at the same time will become increasingly lonely. They will have hundreds of friends, but will not be able to truly open their hearts to any of them. These words accurately describe the paradox of modern communication on social networks. The elders were particularly concerned about the impact of technology on children and young people. Venerable Seraphim of Saraf warned, "A time will come when children will play with demonic toys, and these games will captivate their minds and hearts." Many see in these words a prediction about computer games, which are indeed capable of causing severe addiction in children. Elder Nikolai Guryanov spoke of invisible chains by which people would be bound in the future. These chains are not iron, they are not visible to the eye, but they are stronger than steel, because they bind not the body, but the soul and mind of a person. Does this not resemble digital addiction, when a person is formally free, but in fact chained to their devices? In the prophecies of Russian elders, the theme of globalization and the creation of a single world government occupies a special place. Surprisingly, ascetics who lived in the 19th and early 20th centuries foresaw processes that have fully unfolded only in our time. Venerable Seraphim of Viritsa said, "The time will come when state borders will be erased, and people will become citizens not of countries, but of the world." These words, spoken in the 1930s of the last century, describe modern globalization processes with striking accuracy. Elder Lavrenti of Chernigov warned about the creation of a global management system. There will be a single world government, and in order to control people, a single world currency and a single world passport will be introduced. Today we observe the growing influence of international organizations such as the UN, the World Bank, the IMF, and the active promotion of the idea of global governance. The elders were particularly troubled by the consequences of cultural unification. Venerable Nilus the Myrrh Streamer predicted, "The time will come when peoples will forget their traditions and customs. Everyone will live the same way, wear the same clothes, eat the same food." Is this not what is happening today, as Western mass culture spreads throughout the world, displacing national characteristics? Elder John Christiankin spoke of a single economic space. The whole world will become like one market, where everything will be sold and bought, and without a special mark, it will be impossible to sell or buy anything. In these words, many see a prediction about the modern system of international trade and electronic payments. Venerable Seraphim of Saraf warned, "The time will come when the whole world will unite into one kingdom for common well-being and for the struggle against faith." This prophecy resonates with modern tendencies towards the secularization of society and the displacement of religious values from public life under the pretext of tolerance and progress. The elders were particularly concerned about the prospect of total control over the individual in a globalized world. Elder Paisios the Athonite predicted, "They will introduce a card, like a credit card, with 3 sixes. Without it, it will be impossible to sell or buy anything." In the era of biometric passports and digital identifiers, these words sound prophetic. Schema Archimandrite Christopher warned, "All people will be numbered, and without a number, a person will not be able to live in society, neither receive medical care nor buy bread." Today, when personal data becomes the key to receiving public services and making purchases, these predictions take on new meaning. Transnational corporations, whose influence sometimes exceeds that of individual states, were also the subject of prophetic visions. Elder Nikolai Guryanov said, "The time will come when not kings and presidents will rule the world, but merchants and rich people who have power over many countries." This trend is clearly visible in the modern world, where the largest corporations shape not only the economic, but also the political agenda. For Russian elders, nature was always more than just a backdrop for spiritual life. It was a living testament to divine design. In their prophecies, a special place was held by predictions of ecological disasters and climatic changes, topics that are now at the center of the global agenda. Saint Seraphim of Sarov, as early as the beginning of the 19th century, said, "The time will come when angels will not have time to collect human tears shed due to natural disasters. The earth will tire of human sin and will respond with illnesses, droughts, and floods." These words sound prophetic in an era of increasingly frequent climatic cataclysms. Elder Lavrenti of Chernigov predicted, "The air will become unclean, the water bitter, and the earth will cease to yield its former harvests. New diseases will appear, against which there will be no cures." Today we observe both atmospheric pollution and problems with fresh water, and a decrease in soil fertility, and the appearance of antibiotic-resistant infections. St. Nilus the Mersstreamer left an astonishingly accurate prediction about climate change. "The seasons will get mixed up. Warmth will come where there was cold, and cold where there was warmth. Winters will become snowless, and summers, sometimes dry, sometimes rainy, out of season." Is this not what is happening now, when anomalous weather phenomena become the norm? Elder Antony of Optina warned, "People will poison the air, water, and earth, and then wonder why diseases multiply." In these words, it is easy to see a prediction of the ecological crisis caused by industrial pollution. Saint Seraphim of Viritsa spoke of forest fires and floods. "The time will come when fire will devour forests, and water inundate cities. And this will not be God's punishment, but a consequence of human negligence towards nature." Today, we regularly observe catastrophic fires and floods around the world. The prospects of natural resource depletion particularly troubled the elders. Elder John Krestiankin predicted, "People will suffer more from a lack of clean water than from a lack of bread." These words are coming true in regions where fresh water is continuing a scarce resource. Saint Paisios the Athonite warned about genetically modified products. "The time will come when people will change the nature of plants, and this altered food will bring diseases that never existed before." Today, the question of GMO safety remains a subject of intense debate. The elders saw the ecological crisis not as an accident, but as a natural consequence of humanity's spiritual crisis. Saint Seraphim of Sarov said, "When people forget that the earth is God's temple, it will cease to be a home for them." Moral degradation and spiritual impoverishment of humanity is one of the central themes in the prophecies of Russian elders. Their predictions regarding the transformation of moral values describe the realities of the 21st century with astonishing accuracy. Venerable Seraphim of Viritsa, as early as the 1930s, stated, "A time will come when sin will not be considered sin, and virtue will be ridiculed. People will be ashamed of their faith, but not ashamed of their vices." Is this not what is happening today, when traditional moral values are declared outdated, and deviations from them are seen as an expression of personal freedom? Elder Lavrenti of Chernigov warned about the breakdown of family values. A time will come when debauchery and marital infidelity will be perceived as the norm. People will be proud of sins they once were ashamed of. The mother will not understand the daughter, and the daughter will not understand the mother. In an era of family crisis, these words sound prophetic. The elders were particularly concerned about the future of children and youth. Venerable Ambrose of Optina predicted, "A time will come when children will teach their parents. The young will not respect their elders, and gray hair will not command respect." Modern generation gaps and the crisis of authority confirm the accuracy of these predictions. The elders also spoke of sexual promiscuity as a sign of spiritual impoverishment. Venerable Nihilus, the Myrrh streamer, prophesied, "People will live like animals, not distinguishing gender, and for this, God's wrath will come upon them." Today, as the very concept of gender blurs, these words take on new meaning. The elders' predictions about the spread of occultism and magical practices proved astonishingly accurate. Elder John Kresjankin said, "A time will come when people will believe not in God, but in fortune-tellers and sorcerers. And this will not be in the Dark Ages, but in an era of great scientific discoveries." Indeed, alongside scientific progress, we observe a surge of interest in esotericism and occultism. Venerable Seraphim of Sarov warned against the substitution of spiritual guidelines. Many will seek not the salvation of the soul, but bodily health and material well-being. And for this, they will be ready to worship any gods. In an era of cults of physical health and material success, these words sound remarkably contemporary. The elders also foresaw the atheization of society, but noted that it would have a peculiar character. Venerable Barsanuphius of Optina said, "A time will come when people will not openly deny God, but will live as if He does not exist." This is an accurate description of the practical atheism prevalent in modern society. The elders paid particular attention to the problem of losing the sense of sin. Elder Paisios of Mount Athos warned, "The most terrifying thing is not that people will sin, but that they will stop considering sin as sin. Then repentance will become impossible." In a society where the concept of sin is declared an outdated psychological complex, these words acquire particular relevance. Venerable Seraphim of Viritsa predicted spiritual impoverishment even among believers. Churches will be open, but it will be impossible to go to them. Everything will change inside. Many interpreters see in these words a warning about a formal, superficial attitude towards faith. The prophecies of Russian elders concerning the wars and conflicts of the 21st century are striking in their accuracy and depth. These spiritual seers, living long before modern geopolitical upheavals, described with astonishing clarity the confrontations we observe today. Venerable Seraphim of Viritsa, as early as the 1930s of the last century, said, "When the East gains strength, everything will become unstable. The numbers on the left side will increase. This will be a time of sorrows and tears." Many interpreters see in these words a prediction of the growing influence of China and other Eastern powers, which we observe in contemporary geopolitics. Particularly striking are the prophecies about the confrontation between Russia and the West. Elder Lavrenti of Chernigov predicted, "The West will corrupt the whole world, but it will fall by the hand of Russia. No one will defeat Russia. Only internal enemies can destroy it." In the context of modern sanctions and informational confrontation, these words acquire new meaning. Venerable Seraphim of Sarov spoke of future military technologies. The time will come when war will be waged not by people, but by machines, and a single push of a button will decide the fates of thousands. Today, in the era of drones, missile systems, and cyber weapons, these words sound prophetic. Elder Nikolai Guryanov warned of local conflicts. There will be no great war, but there will be many small ones, and more people will die in them than in a great one. Indeed, after World War II, humanity has experienced numerous local conflicts that have claimed millions of lives. The prophecies of the elders about the causes of future wars are astonishing. Venerable Nihilus, the Mur streamer, said, "Wars will be waged not for land but for resources. Water and bread will become more expensive than gold." In the context of modern conflicts over oil, gas, and water resources, these words acquire particular relevance. Elder Ioan Krestiankin predicted information wars. The time will come when entire nations will be conquered without a single shot. Lies will be the main weapon. Today, we observe how information campaigns and soft power are becoming key tools of geopolitical influence. The elders' foresight regarding Middle Eastern conflicts caused particular concern. Venerable Anthony of Optina said, "When the promised land becomes a battlefield, know that the time of great trials is approaching." The Middle East has indeed become a constant hotbed of tension. Can science explain the phenomenon of prescience demonstrated by Russian elders? This question concerns not only believers, but also representatives of the academic community. Modern science offers several approaches to explaining the prophetic gift, although none of them provides an exhaustive answer. Psychologists view prophecies through the prism of intuition, the brain's ability to process information at a subconscious level. In their opinion, a person with developed intuition can pick up faint signals and trends inaccessible to ordinary perception. Elders who spent years in prayerful contemplation could have developed this ability to the highest level. Neurophysiological studies show that during deep meditation and prayer, specific areas of the brain associated with time perception are activated. In such a state, a person's subjective sense of time may change, which theoretically could open access to information about future events. Scientists from Princeton University, as part of the Global Consciousness Project, found that the human brain is capable of reacting to events a few seconds before they occur. They called this phenomenon presentiment. Perhaps in elders, this ability was developed to a much greater extent. Quantum physics offers even more radical explanations. According to some quantum theories, time is not linear. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously. Theoretically, under certain conditions, human consciousness can gain access to information from the future. Researchers from the Institute of Heart Math hypothesized that the human heart can perceive information not only from the past and present, but also from the future. Their experiments showed that heart rhythm changes in response to stimuli that have not yet occurred. Perhaps elders practicing heart prayer could have amplified this natural ability of the human body. Parapsychologists study the phenomenon of clairvoyance, the ability to receive information inaccessible to ordinary senses. Although most academic scientists are skeptical of parapsychology, some experiments in this field yield statistically significant results not explainable by chance. It is important to understand that scientific and religious approaches to understanding the prophetic gift do not necessarily contradict each other. Believers can view neurophysiological mechanisms as a tool through which divine revelation manifests. As one Orthodox theologian said, God speaks to us in the language of our body and our brain. It is interesting that many elders were simple people, without special education, which makes their prophecies even more astonishing. They could not rely on scientific knowledge or complex analysis of political trends. Their predictions were often clothed in simple figurative forms, understandable to their contemporaries. And only decades later did their profound meaning become clear. Perhaps the most striking aspect of the elders' prophecies is their ability to foresee not only events, but also their spiritual significance. They saw not just the emergence of new technologies, but their impact on the human soul. Not just political changes, but their spiritual consequences. This dimension of prescience is the most difficult to explain from a purely scientific point of view. A skeptical view of the prophecies of the elders is an important element in the objective study of this phenomenon. Critical thinking demands asking uncomfortable questions. Were the predictions truly made before the events, or were they subject to retrospective adjustment? How reliable are the sources through which these prophecies have reached us? Are accurate coincidences not simply the result of selective interpretation of vague statements? The problem of source reliability is particularly acute. Many prophecies of the elders have come down to us through the recollections of their disciples, recorded years or even decades after the ascetics' deaths. Human memory is selective. It tends to adjust past events in light of current knowledge. What seemed like a vague hint can be perceived as an accurate prediction after the event has occurred. Psychologists call this retrospective distortion, a cognitive bias in which past events seem more predictable after their outcome is known. Skeptics point to the Barnum effect, a psychological phenomenon where people perceive general, vague statements as an accurate description of their personality or situation. Many prophecies are formulated so vaguely that they can be applied to various events. For example, predictions about wars, natural disasters, or the moral decay of society are too universal. Such events have occurred in all eras. The possibility of conscious manipulation cannot be ignored. History knows many cases where prophecies were created post factum or adjusted to confirm certain religious or political views. Sometimes this was done with good intentions, to strengthen faith or moral instruction, but the result was a distortion of historical truth. The problem of translation and interpretation deserves special attention. Elders often expressed themselves metaphorically, using imagery understandable to their contemporaries. When translating these images into the language of modern technologies and events, there is room for subjective interpretations. What seems to some to be an accurate description of the Internet, others may interpret completely differently. A methodological approach to verifying prophecies requires strict criteria. A prediction must be recorded before the event, be specific and unambiguous, and not allow for multiple interpretations. It must describe something that could not have been foreseen based on existing trends. Most prophecies of the elders, unfortunately, do not fully meet these criteria. For an objective researcher, it is important to separate genuine historical evidence from later additions. This requires painstaking work with primary sources, analysis of various editions of texts, and comparison of dates. Such work is ongoing, but its results rarely receive widespread publicity. Sensational, accurate predictions attract much more attention. A critical approach does not mean a complete denial of the phenomenon of prophecies. Even if cases of obvious manipulation and retrospective distortion are discarded, there remains evidence that is difficult to explain by simple coincidence or intuitive foresight of trends. These cases deserve serious scientific study without bias, both towards blind faith and towards categorical denial. Perhaps the most valuable aspect of the prophecies of the elders is not the prediction of specific events, but a deep understanding of spiritual laws and moral principles that remain unchanged throughout all times. Their warnings about the consequences of moral decay, the cult of consumption, and technological enslavement are relevant regardless of whether they were the result of supernatural revelation or deep spiritual experience and wisdom. Among the multitude of prophecies by Russian elders, those speaking of spiritual revival instill particular hope. After grim predictions of wars, ecological catastrophes, and moral decay of society, they point to a light at the end of the tunnel, a period of spiritual awakening that is to come after a time of severe trials. Reverend Seraphim of Sarov left an astonishing prophecy. After the terrible calamities that the Lord will allow upon Rus, she will rise and will not be rich materially, but rich in spirit. And in Optina, there will be 7 more luminaries, 7 pillars. In these words, the elder foresaw not just the restoration of churches and monasteries, but a genuine spiritual transformation of society. Elder Lavrenti of Chernigov spoke of a new generation of believers. The time will come when even unbelievers will fly to us for faith, but many will not make it. Many interpret these words as a prediction of a mass conversion of people to faith during a period of global upheaval. The words of Reverend Seraphim of Viritsa are striking. What no one expects will happen. Russia will rise from the dead, and the whole world will be amazed. Orthodoxy will be revived and triumph in it. At the same time, the elder emphasized that the revival would begin not with external prosperity, but with internal transformation. First, spiritual wealth will be restored. Then the Lord will send material wealth. Elder Nikolai Guryanov predicted the emergence of a new generation of believers. The time will come when young people who grew up without faith will suddenly turn to God with such force that they will surprise old believers. They will seek truth with thirst because they lived in lies for a long time. It is important to note that the elders did not promise an easy and trouble-free path to spiritual revival. Reverend Seraphim of Sarov warned, "The Lord will lead Russia to great glory through suffering." This idea of suffering as a path to purification runs through many prophecies. Schema Archimandrite Seraphim Tiapochkin spoke of the signs of a nascent revival. When you see young people drawn to churches, when monasteries and churches begin to be restored, know that these are signs of Russia's spiritual awakening. Can one see signs of these processes in the modern world? Over the past 30 years, thousands of churches and hundreds of monasteries have been restored in Russia. Many young people, who grew up in families without religious traditions, are turning to faith. Interest in spiritual literature, pilgrimage, and monasticism is growing. However, the elders warned that this revival would be accompanied by serious trials. Reverend Lavrenti of Chernigov said, "Many will rise against Russia and Orthodoxy, and their end will be heavy." These words resonate with the current geopolitical situation. Elder Paisios of Mount Athos left an astonishing prophecy about the revival of traditional values. The time will come when the depravity of the world will reach its limit, and then people themselves will begin to seek purity and chastity. What is considered backwardness today will be perceived as a treasure tomorrow. It is important to understand that in the prophecies of the elders, spiritual revival is not limited to Russia alone. Reverend Seraphim of Sarov, said, "The Lord will have mercy on Russia for the sake of a small remnant of the faithful. A monarchy will be restored in Russia, and the Orthodox Tsar will be chosen by the people themselves. The Lord himself will point out that chosen one." What then can modern man glean from the prophecies of the Russian elders? What lessons does this astonishing legacy of spiritual wisdom offer us? First and foremost, the elders teach us vigilance, the ability to discern the signs of the times. In an era of informational noise and constant news streams, this ability becomes particularly valuable. The elders warned, "External events always have a spiritual dimension. Spiritual causes lie behind material processes. To view the world through their eyes means to see the invisible, to read the signs that most people miss." The second important lesson is independence from technological temptations. The elders did not call for a complete renunciation of technologies. They warned about the danger of dependency on them. "Use it, but do not become attached," said Elder Paisios of Mount Athos about technological innovations. This formula is more relevant than ever in a world of digital captivity. Smartphones, social networks, entertainment platforms, all these are tools that should serve man, not enslave him. The third lesson is the preservation of inner freedom in a world of total control. The elders foresaw the advent of an era when a person's external life would become increasingly regulated. Even if the whole world becomes a prison, internally a person can remain free, said Saint Seraphim of Viritsa. This inner freedom is achieved through spiritual life, prayer, and the preservation of purity of heart and mind. The fourth lesson is the significance of the family as a small church. In their predictions about the destruction of family values, the elders not only stated a fact, but also pointed to a path of resistance, the creation of strong families based on love and mutual respect. When families collapse, states will also fall. But those families that endure will become the pillar of revival, predicted Elder Lavrenti of Chernigov. The fifth lesson is the importance of communion with nature. Warning about ecological catastrophes, the elders reminded us that nature is not merely a resource for consumption, but God's creation, requiring careful treatment. A man separated from the earth loses touch with reality, said Saint Ambrose of Optina. In an era of urbanization and digital technologies, this advice acquires particular significance. The sixth lesson is a critical attitude towards information. The elders foresaw the advent of an era of informational manipulation and taught how to distinguish truth from falsehood. A time will come when falsehood will dominate, and many will believe it more than the truth, warned Elder Nikolai Guryanov. Today, in the era of fake news and information wars, this lesson is especially relevant. The seventh lesson is the significance of personal spiritual experience. In a world of relativism and the erosion of values, the elders pointed to the necessity of a personal encounter with God. Do not believe one who speaks of God but has not met him in their heart, taught Saint Seraphim of Sarov. This principle helps to distinguish authentic spirituality from the numerous counterfeits that abound in the modern world. The eighth lesson is overcoming fear of the future. The elders' prophecies, even the most alarming ones, always contained hope. After night, dawn always comes, said Elder John Krestiankin. This optimism, based not on naivety, but on deep faith, helps to overcome the anxiety and uncertainty so characteristic of our time. The ninth lesson is the significance of small deeds. The elders taught that great changes begin with changing oneself. Save yourself, and thousands around you will be saved, said Saint Seraphim of Sarov. In an era of global problems that seem insurmountable, this advice restores a person's sense of personal responsibility and the ability to influence the world. The 10th lesson is preparation for eternity. All the elders' prophecies point to the temporary nature of earthly trials and the eternal significance of spiritual life. Live as if you are to die tomorrow, and at the same time, as if you will live for 1,000 years, advised St. Ambrose of Optina. This paradoxical approach helps to maintain balance between earthly concerns and eternal values.